Where would Grant Hill rank if the body never betrayed him? You ever think about that stuff?
You know, I think about it maybe more so now, in that I retired. I mean, when I was playing, and going through some of the injury problems and ordeals, and then coming back and playing till I was 40. I kind of forgot about my prime years. I forgot about those years.
Mm-hmm.
But now that you have time to reflect, I was fortunate. I had 4 great years in college that playing at Duke, and those experiences, and then 6 years. My first 6 years in the NBA couldn't have been any better.
Mm-hmm.
And I came right in and made an impact right away. And then had the issue with my ankle at 27, and it was really at a point. I felt my last 2 years in Detroit, it was all coming together. Like, it was just the game. You still had your level of athleticism. The game was you could think the game now. The game was easier. It slowed down. It was just I was entering into my prime.
Yeah.
And hopefully that would have lasted for at least 4 or 5 years. And so not so much my legacy, but I sometimes I wonder now, like, what would have it been like if I could have continued with that momentum. Of course, instead I missed 4 years, and when I came back, I physically wasn't the same, and probably wasn't mentally or emotionally the same either. So like, I think about that now and just like, wow, like what could have happened, what could have been. And my kids, it's pretty funny. They go on YouTube now,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll show or watch old highlights, and they'll call me over and say, "Dad, you weren't always a scrub. You actually were pretty good."
Yeah.
And it's a very humbling experience when your kids do that to you.
Yeah, little pups need a history lesson now and again. YouTube's a nice reminder that Dad was pretty damn good. Grant Hill with us here on Tiki and Tierney. So, Grant, what do you think so far? I mean, because I can do 30 minutes on this, but obviously I want to get your thoughts. What is the biggest story so far, whether it's a positive or a negative, that you think really has owned the first quarter of the season in the NBA so far? What jumps out to you?
It's hard to single out one story. There's been a lot of great stories. If you think back last year this time, there was 2 stories that really were leading the way. It was Kobe's retirement tour and the Warriors, unbelievable play, and sort of the idea, can they go for this all-time record? That was sort of the storyline last year at this point. If you think now, I mean, there's the Warriors super team and how they're gelling and playing at an elite level, and so on and so forth. And then you have the play of Russell Westbrook, averaging a triple-double. And then Harden. I mean, what Harden is doing and has that team playing good basketball. I mean, to me, those are some of the main stories of many stories that exist this time of year. And it's fun. I mean, it's I had a chance to watch Westbrook play in person on Monday, and it's just remarkable what he's doing. He's making it look easy.
That's frightening.
And
Yeah.
he's my early season MVP with his level of play. And the big question we all want to know is, can he sustain it? Can he keep it up over the course of an 82-game season? And, I think he can.
I
think
do,
if
too.
he can stay healthy,
Yeah.
I think he will.
I'll tell you what, I want to get back to Harden in a second because you brought up James Harden's name, and I want to throw something by you. But specific to Westbrook, you used the word sustain. I don't think there's any doubt he can sustain it this season for sure. He is on a mission. And as you mentioned, when you were 27, when the physical traits are in complete sync with the mind, he seems to be there. So he is in that maybe 3-4 year window as a pro athlete where everything's rolling, and oh boy, he's going to get the triple double average. My question about Westbrook pertains more to his long term sustainability. He plays with such a reckless ferocity, which is great to watch. But man, Grant, can he do that when he's 32, 33?
I don't know if he can. I mean, I think he's a great athlete, so his 32, 33 is still going to be pretty darn good. It's kind of like, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, when they were 32, 33. They weren't quite the same, but they still were pretty elite in terms of their athleticism. And, I think what happens is, first of all, the amount of energy and stamina required to do what a Jordan or a Kobe or, guys like that, is the same amount that's required for what Russell's doing, in my opinion. And they both were, all three of those guys were great players and great athletes. But I think what happens naturally is as you get older, you start to, and as the body slowly starts to decline in terms of athleticism, you start to pick things up,
Mm-hmm.
and you become more efficient, and you don't have to exert as much energy. And I think that will naturally happen. I actually think, as crazy as this, I think he actually has tapered that a little bit since he first came in. When he first came in, he was all over the place. And I think he's actually more efficient now with his use of the energy, if that makes any sense. And I think that will continue to happen here over the next 5 to 6 years, assuming he can stay healthy.
That's interesting. Talking to Grant Hill, seven-time All-Star, former Duke star, of course, and he's with us here on Tiki and Tierney. So back to James Harden. Now, Grant, as a fan and as a broadcaster, obviously, since I didn't play in the NBA, my narratives for certain players are defined early and then kind of shaped as I see more or less, depending upon the narrative that's actually defined in my head. And specific to James Harden, the narrative wasn't always positive. Not that he's not a great scorer. Of course he is. There's no doubt. Really one of the best scorers I've ever seen in my life. But I think what maybe I'm a little reticent still to jump on, I don't know fully if he's a winning enough player to play deep into June, to lead a team, to play unselfishly, which I know he's doing more so this year, to play a little more defense, which I know he's doing a little more this year. At the end of the day, do I need to change how I view James Harden? Is he a winning player?
I think he can be. I think a lot of times the circumstances, and a lot of which maybe we don't know or understand, can contribute to sort of how one is perceived or how one plays. The gentleman we just talked about before, Westbrook. I think, you go back 3 years ago, people were questioning him. Is he too selfish? Does he know, and now, we're applauding him and talking about him as an MVP.
Mm-hmm.
And so with Harden, it's been an interesting journey these last few years. And, 2 years ago, he was, sort of the runner-up to Steph Curry as an MVP. The team got to the conference finals. Then last year, things imploded. They brought in a D'Antoni. I think we all were unsure of how that would play. But, clearly he is thriving in that system. And so nothing new about him in terms of his talent.
Yep.
We all know what he can do. And maybe he's doing a little more than we knew he could do. But I think the ultimate judge will be what he does with the postseason. What can he do with this team in the postseason? And so there's a chance. There's a chance that you're certainly right to have your feelings and be skeptical. But I think if he can get his team to play at a high level in the postseason, I think he can change that narrative, and I think people maybe come to appreciate and understand him even more so.
Yeah, I throw that by you because one thing to be skeptical, it's another thing to throw unnecessary shade at a player, and I want to make sure that I'm not doing that. And I take a lot of pride knowing basketball. And there was just, with Westbrook, it was almost like I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because there was such discernible energy where I'm like, okay, this is a guy, eventually he's going to mature. It's not a lack of effort or passion. And maybe I was a little misguided with Harden. I'm not sure. But I saw a little lackadaisical approach at times. And it kind of turned me off, but I know he really is playing lights out. So you can't deny that. I know you're doing some stuff with Allstate. I want to get to that in a sec. Quickly, though, what's your thoughts on the Knicks here, Grant? There's a lot of new pieces, a lot of moving parts, and a lot of compelling pieces here. Not in terms of championship picture, but do you think the Knicks can continue this upward trajectory and maybe make a legitimate push for a top 4 seed in the East and actually be a viable threat? Maybe not in June, but certainly into late May.
Well, I think we one thing at a time. Yeah, I think they will be a playoff team, and I know they have played well as of late. Their record is, the East is still wide open. Cleveland is they're only 4 games behind Cleveland, but Cleveland clearly is the best team in the Eastern Conference. I think Toronto is right under them.
Yep.
And then from there, it's kind of wide open. I do like the team. I like how they're starting to play good basketball. They've had some good quality wins. They're starting to figure each other out. I think one of the keys will be health. Can they stay healthy? And but I do like Jeff Hornacek. I think it's a tough spot. I think having to sort of play the triangle offense, but also incorporate your own style. I think he's figuring out how to do that and get the most out of his players. But yeah, I do think they are a playoff team. And then with the East, I mean, anything can happen.
It's been a little weird.
Move up and be
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm
They
sorry.
could
You
be
just cut out for a sec. Go ahead, Grant. My bad. Go ahead.
They could be a third or fourth seed, or they could squeak in and be an eighth seed. I mean, I think the seedings will certainly come down to the last few weeks, last month of the season. But I like the progress, and I think for Knicks fans, that's what you have to see. It's been a number of difficult seasons not being in the playoff picture. And, I always say, look, if they get in the playoffs in New York, they'll throw a parade. Just they're that excited for having their Knicks be a winner. And this year they might be throwing a parade. I think they're going to make it in the postseason.